Hello and welcome to the last lecture of CA Inter Prayas Revision Lectures and Test Series. Today we are going to discuss declaration and payment of dividend, accounts of company, audit and auditors. Now these are the most important chapters of your syllabus. Whenever I advise my students, I always tell them to start revising in the reverse order. So first, when you revise, you should revise the auditors chapter, then go for accounts of company and declaration and payment of dividend. Then you must be wondering, ma'am, why didn't you revise in that manner? Students, I wanted that this part, which is most important, should be discussed, close to the exam. So that is why I discussed it last, so that while we are discussing it, it is very close to your examination. Okay, so let us revise the concepts of dividend declaration and payment of dividend first, then we will discuss accounts of company followed by audit and auditors. If you're watching these videos for the first time, I am CA Preeti Agarwal and we are discussing all the acts with special handwritten notes for last minute revision. If you have missed any of these lectures or test series, I'm leaving a link of the playlist. Just click on that I button and you will be able to see all the revision lectures and also the test series with solution discussion. Yes. If you want to download the papers, then visit the link given in the description box. You can visit my website and in the e-library section, you will be able to download all the test papers. If you want these handwritten notes, which are made specially for last minute revision, then do visit my website theorymasterslearning.com. Link of these notes is in the description box. So students, without wasting any more time, let us quickly discuss declaration and payment of dividend. Let us discuss the provisions of declaration and payment of dividend. Now, I have prepared a list of all the relevant sections in this chapter. All the section numbers are important because in the past questions have been asked on all of them. So you can expect question on any of these section numbers. Section 1, we will actually start our revision with meaning definition of dividend. Then we will discuss types of dividend. Section 123 discusses provisions relating to declaration of dividend. Section 124, it discusses provisions relating to unpaid dividend account. Very, very important for exam. Section 125, it discusses the creation of investor protection and investor education and protection fund. How is the fund created? What is credited to the fund? How is it utilized? Section 126, not very frequently asked in the exam but can be asked. Right to dividend shares held in abeyance pending registration of transfer. Lastly, section 127, the provisions are super important for exam. Punishment for failure to distribute dividend. You have to remember these penalty provisions. Generally, I don't insist on you remembering the provisions or penalty provisions, but here I insist. You have to remember section 127. Let us discuss the meaning and the definition of dividend. Now, why is dividend declared? See, if you are in a proprietary business, you take away profits. If you have a partnership firm, profit is distributed among partners. So if you are giving money to the business, if you are working hard for the business, you expect something in return, right? Now, in proprietary, the proprietor takes away the profit. In partnership, the partners, they share the profit. In case of company, the members are of the opinion that if we are giving capital and you are using that capital to do business, can we expect something in return? Will you give us something in return? We are giving you money. The board of directors, they decide, yes, oh, all right, this is the profit of the company in a particular year. As per the dividend policy, we can part away, we can share with you some percentage of profit, and that sharing of profit is known as dividend. Only companies declare dividend. Partnership, proprietary, there is no concept of dividend. Only in case of company, we give dividend to the members. It's just an incentive to stay invested in the company. It's just a return on the money that they have given to the company. It's just an added benefit, that the member receives. So that sharing of profit is known as dividend. Is it compulsory to declare dividend? No. Everything depends on the profitability of the company. See, I have mentioned that on the slide. Everything depends on the profitability of the company, the dividend policy of the company, and the equity shareholders will get dividend after it is paid to the preference shareholders. So sharing of company's profit is nothing but dividend. So dividend is share of company's profit distributed among members. It is return on capital for the shareholders. How much should be given, whether it should be given or not, depends. It is at the discretion of the directors. They recommend, and then the shareholders will declare the dividend. If nothing is recommended, then shareholders cannot declare dividend. I am talking only about equity dividend, okay? Preference, that is a whole altogether different story. How is dividend defined? Dividend is defined under section 2, clause 35 of the Act. And see, the definition is very simple. Dividend includes interim dividend. They have not even explained the meaning of dividend. See, the word uses includes. They have not used a word means. They have not explained the meaning. They have just said dividend includes interim dividend. So what does it mean? It simply means that the provisions applicable to dividend apply to interim dividend also. Okay, so the provisions of dividend, they apply to interim dividend. That is the meaning of the definition. It didn't explain the meaning of dividend. ICAI has given a better definition of dividend. They say that it is a distribution to shareholders out of the profits or reserves available for this purpose. So distribution of profit, if there's no profit in a particular year, you can use the reserves. That is nothing but dividend. Let us discuss the types of dividend. Now, dividend may be classified on the basis of time or on the basis of nature of shares. On the basis of time, it may be either interim dividend or final dividend. Now, interim means between something. Okay, so interim dividend means dividend which is declared between two annual general meetings. It is the dividend which is declared during the year. Okay, now why? What is the need? See, whenever you receive something extra, it always brings joy, and there are companies which give consistently, they give interim dividend, so that people stay invested, in that company. There is not too much of volatility, there's not too much of buying and selling. So it is to maintain consistency in the price. If there is too much of selling, this company doesn't give dividend at all, let me sell the shares, and you tell your friends also, don't buy. So if you're selling the shares, price goes down. If nobody is trading, nobody is dealing in it, the price remains stagnant, there's no growth. So give interim dividend, encourage people to buy the shares or to stay invested in the company. It is declared between two annual general meetings. It is declared by the board of directors. So it is recommended, declared, everything by the board of directors. Shareholders don't play a role in interim dividend. But yes, final dividend is recommended by the board. How do they recommend it? How will we come to know what is recommended? It is given in the director's report. So they recommend a percentage through the director's report, and it is declared by the shareholders in the annual general meeting. What if the board does not recommend? Nothing will be declared in the annual general meeting. You cannot even declare a percentage which is higher than what is recommended. Lower is okay, but not higher. Now, shareholders will declare dividend by just passing an ordinary resolution. This is the business, it's an ordinary business of AGM, declaration of dividend. So it is declared by passing an ordinary resolution. On the basis of nature of shares, we have preference dividend or equity dividend. Now, preference shares are those shares which have priority. They will get dividend before it is given to the equity shareholders. So if they are cumulative, the dividend will accumulate. If the dividend is not paid in a particular year, it will accumulate and it will be paid along with the dividend of the next year, subsequent year. What are non-cumulative preference shares? If the dividend is not paid in a particular year, it lapses. it lapses. By default, preference shares are assumed to be cumulative. Equity shares, now they are shares on which who get the dividend after it is paid to the preference shareholders. How much dividend will they get? Depends on the dividend policy of the company. Depends on the availability of profit, the surplus, the free reserves that are available for distribution of dividend. So the availability of profits after satisfying the rights of the preference shareholders, that will determine how much will the equity shareholders get. Sources of dividend. Now we have declared dividend. You need money, no? So from where will we arrange this money? Law says, see, this is nothing but distribution of profit. Use the current profits. So current year's profits will be utilized after depreciation. So you have to provide for depreciation. Then whatever is remaining can be distributed in the form of dividend. I don't have profits in a year, or I don't have sufficient profit. See, there is a difference. Either you don't have profit, means there is loss, or you have insufficient profit. Then why declare dividend? Sometimes to maintain goodwill, name, reputation of the company, we decide to give dividend. There is no profit in the current year, or there is inadequate profit, then utilize the profit which you have earned in the previous years, which are kept in the form of reserve. So you can use profits of any previous financial year after providing for depreciation. That is the requirement. You can even use both. Like if the current year's profits are insufficient, use some profit from the current year and use reserves. You can also use money which is given by either the central government or state government in pursuance of any guarantee. Sometimes the government gives guarantee again to maintain goodwill, reputation of the company, to maintain a good economic environment. They give some money which can be distributed in the form of dividend. So you can use either current year's profit, previous year reserves, or you can also use the money received from the government. Transfer to reserve. Do you remember your parents telling you this? During Diwali, let's say that you received 1,000 rupees from your relative. Your parents will come and tell you, better don't spend, save. If suppose you received 10,000 rupees, they will say, give it to us. We will deposit that in your bank. Whenever you need something, we will invest it in your name. Indian parents always teach us and they inculcate the habit of saving. When you are a child, you feel very irritated. This is not what we want, dad. We want to spend it. You rarely give us money. Now I want to buy things. I have thought of so many things that I need to buy. When we are children, no, we don't understand these things. But when you grow up, this habit of saving actually helps you in the long run. Trust me, even I felt when my parents would tell me save, or they would tell me you spend your own money. That time I would feel very irritated. But now I know, because now that saving thing has become a habit. So now if I want to buy something, I already have some money in my reserve. I have some money saved and I can always buy things of my choice. But it doesn't pinch now because you're already so used to that concept of saving. So this transfer to reserve is nothing but saving for the future, saving for some rainy day. Law says, पैसा आया है, पूरा का पूरा खर्च करना जरूरी नहीं है. If let's say in this particular year we have earned a profit of 5 lakh rupees, don't give everything in the form of reserve. Don't give everything in the form of dividend. Keep something for the future. What if tomorrow you don't have profit? Keep something aside. So that money means it is transferred to reserve. Before declaration of dividend, you can transfer some percentage of profit as the company considers necessary, it is at the discretion of the board. Something which is left at the discretion of the company. Now, there are certain people who don't want to save. Okay, so if you have your friends and they say, अरे कौन पैसा जमा करता है यार, कल का किसने देखा है, आज है बस enjoy करना है. So there are people who spend whatever money they get. So you cannot force them. You cannot tell, अरे उनका पैसा उनकी मर्जी, it is their money, it is their choice. No, you can never force them. Even your parents, they can only advise you, better save 1,000 rupees. They cannot force you. So again, over here, we can only advise the company. We cannot force them to save. So here the Companies Act is only giving them a direction. They're requesting, please save some money if you want to for the future. Everything is left at the discretion. To save or not to save is at the discretion of the company. It's not compulsory. So students, please note that this provision is very, very important for practical questions, that the company has not transferred to the reserve. Can it still declare dividend? So you can say, yes, it can still declare dividend. Anyways, transferring to reserve is not mandatory. Depositing the amount of dividend. Now, you wanted to declare dividend. You saw that you have sufficient profits. Keep the money aside, because once you declare dividend, it becomes an obligation. You have to pay. Keep some money aside. So law says that it shall be deposited in a separate bank account which is open in a scheduled bank 5 days from the date of declaration of dividend. There is also a timeline which I'm going to discuss with you later. So the amount of dividend shall be deposited in the scheduled bank open within a separate bank account, and this money will be deposited within 5 days of what? Of declaration of dividend. So once the dividend is declared in the AGM, within 5 days you have to transfer that money in a separate bank account so that the company doesn't use it for any other purpose. What are the rules to be followed while declaring dividend out of reserves? See students, there are many ways in which you can declare. There are many sources, I should say. There are many sources from which you can declare dividend. You can use the current year's profit, but this year the profit is insufficient. But still, to maintain goodwill, name, reputation, I don't want to give a negative sentiment, negative image of the company. So if suppose to this year I declared dividend, next year I did not declare dividend, so I don't want to maintain that I don't want that inconsistency to come up. So to maintain consistency, good name, reputation of the company, we have to declare dividend, but I don't have that much profit in the current year. Use reserves. You're using your reserve. There should be some restriction to it. You just cannot spend your entire money. See, the company has not made profit in this year, but still they want to declare dividend. It means, it shows how inefficiently the company is operating. And then you are allowing them to use their entire reserves. No, that's not possible. It's just not possible. So here we impose restrictions on the companies that want to use their reserves for declaring dividend. Now let's see what the restrictions are. There are 3 conditions, or 4, like one actually is like a note only. So the rate of dividend should be less than the average dividend of the last 3 years. Okay, so these are conditions which you need to comply with. The rate of dividend should not exceed, it can be equal to. Now why have I mentioned equal to? Because sometimes in a case based question, they give you a percentage which comes to exactly the average of last 3 years. So over here, you should not get confused that it should be always less than only, either less than or equal to. It should not exceed the average rate at which the dividend was declared in the immediately preceding 3 financial years. What if in the 3 financial years, I did not declare any dividend? So then this provision will not apply. This condition will not be, we will not be able to fulfill this condition. Then that is okay, you know. So provided that this sub rule will not apply, you know, this is in this is actually rule 3. So this sub rule will not apply if there is no if there is no dividend declared in each of the past 3 years. What if in the first year I declared some percentage, in second year it is 0, third year also some percentage, and while calculating average I will divide it by 3, not by 2, by 3, because in 2 years I have declared dividend, only in 1 year I have not declared any dividend. Division will be by 3. The total amount that you draw from the reserve should be either less than or equal to 1/10, means 10% of the paid up capital and free reserves as per the latest audited financial statement. So whatever amount that I am drawing from my accumulated profits, from my reserves, it should not be more than 10% of the paid up capital and free reserves as per the latest audited balance sheet. Whatever amount that you withdraw should first be utilized to set off the losses incurred in the financial year in which the dividend is declared. So if there is any loss, then that will be set off first, and whatever amount is remaining, that can be used for dividend. Whatever amount I'm withdrawing, from that I will set off the loss of the current year. Ma'am, why loss? See, why are we using reserve? Maybe because I don't have adequate profit, or I don't have any profit in the current year. That is why I'm using the previous year's profit, no? So in the current year, I don't have profits. I'm using previous year. There is a limit. Should not exceed 10% of the paid up capital and reserve. Another provision is that whatever you are withdrawing from the reserve, first use that money to write off the losses of the current year, and then you can use the remaining for declaration of dividend. Whatever money is now left in the reserve should be at least, okay, whatever money is left after withdrawing, it should not fall below. It means it should be at least 15% of the paid up capital, paid up share capital in this case. In the previous, it was paid up capital and reserves. What if the balance is falling less than 15%? Then you reduce the amount that you are withdrawing from the reserve. Okay, so the balance of reserves should be at least 15% of the paid up capital. Please manage your dividend accordingly. Students, if you want these notes, then link is in the description box. Follow that link. Payment of dividend. All right, now I have decided I want to declare dividend. I know from where I'm going to declare dividend. How can this dividend be paid? Paid in cash. Cash doesn't mean I will give you hard money. If we say that you can pay it in cash, not in kind, we mean that you can give it either by check or a dividend warrant, or you can transfer it by electronic mode like net banking. Nowadays, everything is directly credited in the account if you have given proper net banking details. It is payable to the registered shareholder. Registered means person's name is in the register of members. Or it can be paid to his order, any authorized person like some beneficial owner, or to his banker. Prohibition on payment of dividends. Students, please note that this is extremely important for case-based question, very frequently asked in the exam. I'll tell you how they will frame the question. The company has defaulted in complying with the provisions of section 73 and 74 of the Companies Act. 73 and 74 refers to acceptance of deposits from the public, repayment of the deposits accepted before the commencement of the Companies Act. You have not paid your deposits and you want to declare dividend. First, fulfill your existing liability, use the money for this purpose, then think of declaring dividend. So if the company has not repaid deposits, then in that case, we will not allow you to declare dividend. So this can be asked in a case-based question. Unpaid dividend account, very important, section 124. Okay, section 124, section numbers I have provided earlier in that list. Unpaid dividend account. Now, law says that once the dividend is declared, okay, once the dividend is declared, it becomes an obligation. You have to pay it. It is a liability. Within 30 days of declaration, you should pay it, or at least post the dividend warrants. All right, you have to pay it or post the warrant, and those warrants have to be claimed within 30 days. Many people don't go only to the bank, because the dividend is what, like 10 rupees, 15 rupees. Who will go to the bank for such a lower amount? So if the dividend is declared, it has to be paid or claimed by the shareholder within 30 days of declaration. If you don't do it, then that dividend which is not paid or claimed will be transferred to a separate bank account known as the unpaid dividend account, which is again opened with the scheduled bank. So what is the timeline? You have declared dividend. It should be paid, it should be claimed within 30 days. If not, we give you 7 days time to open a separate bank account known as the unpaid dividend account, transfer that money to that account. If you don't do it, then that transfer will have to be made along with interest at the rate of 12% per annum from the date of default. So if a default is made in transferring the amount, the company will then transfer the amount along with interest at the rate of 12% per annum. If this provision is not there, the company will become lazy and they will not transfer that money. They will transfer whenever they want. So it is very important to impose some penalty for non-transfer. Within 90 days of such transfer, the company, within 90 days, okay, the company will prepare a statement mentioning the name, last known address, and the unpaid dividend amount, and they will post it, they will display it on the website of the company if the company has a website, and they will also be it will also be posted on the website approved by the government for this purpose. So within 90 days, the company will prepare a statement mentioning the name, last known address, and they will place it on the website of the company if the company has a website, and they will also place it on some other website as it is declared by the central, as approved by the central government. Now, why is this required? See, company has sent dividend warrants. You have changed your address, but you have not informed the company. So the company has sent it at your earlier address, and now you are waiting at your new address for the post to arrive. Post has not arrived. Go visit the website. Check if your name is. Check your last known address. Oh, I forgot to update the address. That's something. It's a way of informing to the member that we have sent the warrant. Check whether you have received it or not. Why you have not received? You have not updated your address. Now, there are people who are lazy. They don't claim this money. It will remain in the unpaid dividend account for 7 years. After 7 years, we will then transfer it to the Investor Education and Protection Fund, IEPF. So that unpaid or unclaimed dividend along with the interest, see, if it is in a bank account, it will definitely earn interest. It will be transferred to Investor Education and Protection Fund. What is the use of that fund? That we will study later. Any person claiming that amount from the company will later on be able to do so. They can apply for the money. Now, just to give you some more information over here, along with the dividend, shares will also be transferred to the IEPF account. Later, the shareholder woke up. I have not claimed dividend. I have not even, where are my shares? They are transferred to IEPF account. He can go to the company, submit necessary documents, and there is no charge for all this. Submit necessary documents. You can claim your dividend along with the shares. Next, let us discuss something about Investor Education and Protection Fund, section 125. I have prepared a note on this. I have also used colors to create certain blocks, which is so that it is easy for you to remember. You know, these are all related points. Now, IEPF under section 125 is a fund which is created, it is established by the central government. See, all these are pointers which will help you to know who creates the fund, what is credited to the fund, how is it utilized. It is established by the central government because it's a fund, it involves money. You will have to get it audited also. So it is credited with the amounts which are mentioned over here. They have specific use. Since money is involved, we need to get it audited. So accounts are maintained, they are audited by the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, and these audited accounts and report is then presented to the central government. What is credited to the fund? So students, if you see whatever I've highlighted, those are related points. Central government must have given you grants, donations. So now this is generally given so that it can be used for investor education and protection. Like you must have seen ads on television, investment in mutual funds, investment in stock market, they are subject to market risk. Please read the offer documents carefully before investing. Mutual fund sahi hai, or creating general awareness about investment. So for that purpose, governments may give you grants. It is credited by grants, donations, unpaid dividend. That is the main purpose. No? That is the main credit. From the unpaid dividend account, after 7 years, money will be transferred over here. Interest and other income from investment of the fund. See, if you're receiving money, why keep it idle? Invest it. You can always liquidate that investment when you need to pay money. Now, let's see how this is used. Okay, it can be used. What is the utilization of funds? See the block, students. So what this first 4 points that relates to credit, Utilization, first point is refund of that unclaimed dividend. So you have credited the dividend which was not claimed. Now people have come to claim it, pay from this fund. Application money which is due for refund. We wanted to refund the application money, but the bank account details were not provided correctly by the member, or the name is not matching, or we had sent the check, it was returned. Due to any reason, we could not return that application money. Okay, deposits have matured, debentures have matured, but we don't know where the holder is. We don't have bank details. We are not able to establish contact with him, or the address given is incorrect. He is no longer staying at that address due to any reason. We are not able to pay that money. Keep it in this account. If you let it remain with the company, they will spend it. What is the utilization? It is used to return the application money, used to return repay the matured deposits, debentures, and interest on the above. Money is kept in the account, it will generate interest. Use it. Sale proceeds from fractional shares, which they have been generated at the time of bonus or amalgamation merger, and it is kept in the unpaid account for and those sales proceeds could not be distributed for more than 7 years, so they are transferred here. Unpaid or unclaimed redemption proceeds of preference shares for more than 7 years. Shares whose dividend is outstanding for more than 7 years, even the shares will be transferred. Dividend, unpaid dividend is transferred, along with that the shares will also be transferred. Any other amount. Now how is it utilized? For distribution of disgorge. Now this is not related to what we are studying. Not we are studying what is credited. This is not exactly related to that, but it is to pay the distribution of disgorged amount among applicants. Now what is the meaning of disgorged? It is the profit which you have earned from illegal or unethical means. It's not, I can't zoom in. It is profit earned from unethical means. Now some officers or employees of the company, they have earned profit through unethical means. This has caused loss to applicant or to the shareholder. So the company is now liable to compensate the applicant or shareholder. Company can use the money from this account. Ideally, the person who has committed that committed that offense, person who has committed that wrongful act, he should be liable. But sometimes the amount is so huge that they don't have that much money. Company will pay from this fund, then recover it from that person. Reimbursement of legal expenses, promotion of investor education, that is the main aim. So we can use the money from there. Punishment: in case you fail to comply with any of the provisions of this act, you will be subject to punishment. You have declared dividend, the company has declared dividend, but it has not been paid, warrants have not been posted within 30 days from the date of declaration. See, you have to post the warrant. It may reach that person late, you are not concerned by that, but you should post it. Then what are the consequences? If the director is knowingly a party to that default, then he is subject to imprisonment, maximum 2 years, fine at least 1,000 rupees for each day during which the default continues. Company will be liable to repay this amount along with simple interest at the rate of 18% per annum. Super important for exam. You have to memorize this along with section number. Okay. Now these are certain exceptional cases wherein even though the company has not paid the amount of dividend, you will not blame the company because the company is not at fault. Why? Dividend could not be paid because of the operation of law. Maybe there was some dispute as to the title of the shareholder, as to the title of those shares. Maybe the court has ordered that you stop the payment of dividend on these shares until some decision is reached. There is dispute regarding, I'm reading the third point, dispute regarding the right to receive dividend, like the member has died. So there is a dispute as regards his legal heir, or there is dispute between joint owners. There is some dispute regarding the person who is entitled to receive dividend. So till a decision is made, you will not pay dividend and company will not be blamed for that. It means it will not attract the provisions of section 127. Shareholder gave direction regarding payment of dividend. Please transfer it to my account, but the account number was incorrect. My name was not correct. The name of my bank account is different from the name under which I own shares. Maybe the female shareholder has married, so bank account was changed, but she forgot to change the name on the ownership documents. So in that case, there may be some dispute. The most important provision now, the company has communicated the fact to that shareholder that we could not comply with your directions. If the company has communicated, then the company is not liable. But if the company fails to communicate, then yes, it is liable. Very important for case-based question. Dividend has lawfully been adjusted against any sum due from shareholder. So let's say, for example, that the company had to pay dividend of rupees 50,000 and the company had to recover call money of 30,000. Now the company can pay only 20,000. Okay, the sum which is recoverable can be adjusted against the amount payable to the shareholder as dividend. For any other reason, the failure of the company is not due to the fault of the company, then yes, in that case, the company will not be blamed. All these points are important for case-based question. So students, with this we come to an end of the revision of the chapter declaration and payment of dividend. Next, let us discuss accounts of companies. Let us discuss the important concepts of accounts of company. Now, the company shall prepare books of accounts, books, papers, and financial statements for every year, every financial year. These books, documents, registers, they shall be kept at the registered office of the company. But if you feel that for better administration purposes, better administrative purposes, it is important to preserve these books at some other place, then they may be preserved at a place which the board may decide. The only requirement is that you need to inform the ROC the place where you are maintaining your books of accounts. These books shall be open for inspection by directors. There is no restriction on that. They can also be inspected by persons other than directors, which include registrar of company, authorized officer of central government, officers of serious fraud investigation office. So if they are doubtful that the books of accounts are not maintained, or if there is any fraudulent transaction, then in that case, yes, they may be inspected by registrar, authorized officer of the central government, or officer of SFIU. Books, documents, they shall be preserved. These books of accounts, they shall be preserved for a period of 8 years. And in case you fail to comply with these provisions, you may be subject to penalty of 50,000 rupees, maximum 5 lakh. You may or may not remember this penalty. Maintenance of books, documents, papers in electronic form. I think this time a question will be asked on maintenance of books in the electronic form, because there is an important amendment. Students, I had done an amendment video wherein I had discussed all the relevant amendments for December 21 attempt, and they will apply to May 22 also. Please go and watch that video. We have discussed the amendment in detail. I'll point out the amendment to you. The company will maintain, they can maintain books in the electronic form, provided that the software which they are using provides an audit trail and edit record of every change. This is the amendment. So go and watch that video. Yes, the company can maintain books, documents, papers in electronic form. It is permitted, but it is optional. It's not compulsory. You can still continue to maintain the books in physical form. However, these books should remain accessible in India, something that we can go and refer in India. Whatever accounting software that you are using, maybe Tally or ERP, that should provide or you may have your customized software. It should provide an audit trail, something that will allow you to trace the transactions, how they are recorded. Every step is available. And it should also provide an edit log of every change. So if somebody has changed the entry, who has changed it, is he authorized, what is the time when he has changed, the date, everything should be in the system. It should be stored in the system, and this audit trail cannot be disabled. Okay, so these are the requirements. The books which are maintained in the electronic form should remain in the original or similar format. They should remain complete and unaltered. You should not be able to alter them after they are approved. There are certain softwares which give you the ability to freeze the accounts. Okay, once they are approved by the shareholders, then you can freeze the account so that nobody can change it. It should be displayed in legible form. Even though you are maintaining it electronically, it should be available or displayed in a form which you can read and understand. So it should be displayed in legible form, that is readable form, not in 1 and 0 some computer language. It should be in a form that there is a proper system for storage, retrieval of information, display, printout should be possible, and regular backups should be maintained. Now, students, I clearly remember that few years ago, I had a laptop, and I had stored all my presentations in that laptop. My son was very small and he got angry, due to some reason I don't remember. My laptop was on the table. He just pushed it, and the laptop, the hard disk crashed, and I lost all the data. And the worst part is I had not even taken backup. So there were few presentations on my mobile. I could save only that. And I had to recreate all the presentations again. And from that day onwards, I keep backup at two places. One is in my external hard disk and other is on the cloud. So if anything happens, I am safe. Now, even all these recordings, everything, I have taken proper backups. From that day, I learned that taking backup is important if you don't want to rework on that particular thing again. So maintaining periodic backup, like in companies, I remember in my company, they would take backups on a weekend when the company was not working. So the employees would keep the files in a folder, that the files which they want to be backed up, and the IT department would gain access to each of the computers and then take periodic backup every week. Financial statement, yes, important from definition point of view, very frequently asked. Now, students, in case you wish to go through all the past exam questions, study material, RTP, MTP questions, everything arranged unit wise, then refer my compiler. We have an offer on the compiler. So currently we have an offer. So go and visit my website theorymasterslearning.com for exciting offers on the compiler bomb, which has all the past exam questions, study material, RTP and MTP questions arranged unit wise. Complete answers are given as expected by ICAI. Now, what is a financial statement? Important just from the definition point of view. Financial statement includes balance sheet, profit and loss account. If it's a non-profit organization, then income and expenditure account, cash flow statement. But in case of OPC, small company, dormant company, it may not contain cash flow statement. Statement of change in equity if applicable, any explanatory note, something containing non-financial information, something that you could not record in the financial statements, that can be given in the form of notes to accounts. That can be annexed to, and it forms part of the financial statement. So yes, it consists of balance sheet, P&L account or income and expenditure account, cash flow statement, statement of changes in equity, explanatory notes. The financial statement shall give a true and fair view of the state of affairs of the company. Sometimes a short note is asked on true and fair view. They should comply with accounting standards, and if there is any deviation in following the accounting standards, then the reason for such deviation should be mentioned along with the financial effect in the notes to the financial statement. So if your financials do not comply with the accounting standard, like you have not complied with any particular accounting standard, then why you have not complied, and because of that non-compliance, what is the effect on the financial statement? Has your profit increased? Has it reduced? That will be explained. It should be in the form as provided in Schedule 3. The financials should be laid down before the and they should be laid down at each annual general meeting. This is one of the ordinary businesses of annual general meeting to consider the financial statements, auditor's report, board's report. If the company has subsidiary or associate companies, then consolidated, that is, wherein you add the financial statements of the holding and subsidiary and also the associate company. So you will in your annual report provide standalone as well as the consolidated statements. It is to be laid down before the annual general meeting. All right. So these are other points which you should note for financial statement. Approval and signing of financial statements important for case-based question. For all the case-based questions, refer my compiler, best-selling book, and highly recommended if you want to score exemption in law. The financial statements, including including the consolidated financial statements, shall be first approved by the board before they are signed by the chairperson, if he is authorized by the board. Not authorized, then by 2 directors. Out of those, one should be managing director if the company has a managing director. It should be signed by CEO, CFO, CS if they are appointed. In case of OPC, it will be signed by 1 director. That's a privilege given to OPC, because if you have only 1 director, then only he will sign it, right? Signed statements will then be submitted to the auditor and he will prepare his report accordingly. Important for case-based questions. Reopening of books again can be asked as a short note. We don't allow reopening of accounts, but if it is ordered by the court or tribunal, then yes, reopening of accounts will have to be made. So if an application is made either by the central government or income tax authorities or SEBI or any statutory body or any other person, okay, so there are 5 institutions which you need to remember. Application is made by either the central government or income tax authorities or SEBI or any statutory regulatory body or any other person. The application is made to the court or tribunal. They may pass an order to the effect that earlier accounts were prepared in a fraudulent manner, quite self-explanatory chart. Affairs were mismanaged, then in that case, reopening will be asked. So books will have to be reopened. So application is made by them. Application is made to whom? To the court or tribunal. Sometimes the court or tribunal may themselves pass an order to the effect that earlier accounts, they were prepared in a fraudulent manner. They may have received some information that the books are maintained in a fraudulent manner. So they may, yes, allow reopening, rechecking of the books, recasting of the books. They are of the opinion that affairs were mismanaged. A notice will be served to the applicants that suppose central government has made an application. So we will give a notice to all the other applicants. We will take representations from them whether the books should be reopened or not. Then the court or tribunal will pass an order to revise or reconsider the accounts, and the accounts which are so revised or reconsidered shall be final. Please memorize these provisions. It is important for exam. NFRA, yes, can be asked as a short note. This is some favorite. It's a favorite question of ICAI. They don't ask this in every attempt, but yes, every alternate or, they may skip 1 or 2 attempts, but it is very frequently asked. NFRA. Composition of NFRA is also important, but I'm not covering it over here because it is too mechanical. You just need to by heart the provisions. NFRA. Why was NFRA created? Due to the scams in the past, due to loopholes in the Companies Act, NFRA, a separate body, was incorporated. It is to monitor. Now, what is the aim? It is to enforce and monitor the compliance of auditing and accounting standards. Also to keep an eye on the professionals who are involved in the auditing profession. What are the functions? They can ask you a separate question. What are the functions? So 3 functions. To make recommendation to the central government on formulation and laying down of auditing and accounting standards, NFRA only recommends. The auditing and accounting standards, they are actually passed by the central government. The central government is the main authority to monitor and enforce the compliance with accounting and auditing standards. It is not just to recommend my job is over, to also ensure that these accounting and auditing standards are followed by the company, they are followed by the professionals like chartered accountants, to oversee the quality of service of professionals, to oversee the quality of professionals in the manner like exams are conducted. Are these professionals updated? Do you organize seminars? Like, a practicing chartered accountant has to attend 20 hours of compulsory training with ICI. If you have a COP, then you need to attend 20 hours of compulsory training. So that keeps you updated of whatever amendments are made, new acts enacted. In case you act unprofessionally, you are a party to the fraud, or you were aware of the fraud, cognizant, then in that case penalties or strict action will be taken against these professionals, and action will also be taken by ICAI. Not just them, but also by ICAI. What are the powers of NFRA? Now, NFRA is authorized to investigate. They have the authority to investigate into matters of professional or other misconduct by members or a firm of chartered accountant. I need to just change this, not a firm, but a firm of chartered accountants. Okay. To exercise same powers as given to a civil court to take action, to impose penalty. Like, you can call people, examine them under an oath, call for documents, verification, investigation, impose penalties for proved professional or other misconduct. So you need to memorize this, students. There is no other way out. There's no logic that you can apply here. You just need to memorize these provisions. Board of Directors report. What is included in the board's report? See, it is nothing but communication of the board of directors to the shareholders. Okay, they are communicating with the shareholders. So what are the contents? It will contain web address, if any, where the annual return has been placed, the number of board meetings conducted, directors responsibility report, details of fraud. So these are the contents. I'm just leaving it over here. You just need to read and memorize it. Contents of board's report. Dividend is recommended over here. Particulars of contracts. Like in my video lectures, I will actually take you through the board report, the annual report, the corporate governance report. Yes, we are going to discuss all that. Corporate governance report, I remember I had done a detailed video. I'm leaving a link over here. Students, go and watch that video, because I have actually shown how a corporate governance report looks like. What are the contents of the corporate governance report? You will really enjoy that video. So just click on that I button, or I'm leaving a link in the description box. You can go and watch that. You can also search that on my channel. This reminds me, please subscribe to now your channel, Theory Master. It's no longer my channel. It's your channel, because you request and I deliver. Like, the students were requesting. I had not planned a revision for CA Foundation because lectures are already available. But they requested, no ma'am, we would like to learn from you. We would like to revise from you. We would also want lectures for BCR. And yes, Ginny, you request and we deliver. So it's not my channel, it's your channel, Theory Masters Learning. Subscribe to it so that you get notification for all the important videos. Okay. Corporate governance report. Again, I always tell my students, this is something which you need to by heart, because there is nothing, you just see the report and memorize what are the contents of that. So what is a corporate governance report? It is the manner in which a company is governed or managed. How are you managed? What are your policies? We want information regarding your code of conduct, code of governance. How many board meetings were held? Give us information of all the plant, their location, the market data, the dividend payment date, the book closure, so that the company keeps these things in mind. And we just ensuring that there is no non-compliance by the company. The book closure date, dividend payment, they have records of all this. Okay. CSR, super important, section 135. I think question is expected. Yes, definitely 100% question is expected because there are many amendments. Now, students, I cannot revise because I don't want to leave out any information. There are so many amendments. All the provisions are important. Again, I had done a separate video on CSR. Go and watch that video. Entire concept is covered in that video. The revision, I don't believe in shortcuts. Go and watch that video. Everything is discussed in detail. Leaving a link. Okay. Internal audit, the last part of this chapter. Internal audit, and you are already aware of who is an internal auditor, why is internal audit conducted. But just to give you a brief idea, the companies are managed by systems. Everything is system oriented. Are those systems in place? Are there any loopholes? We need to check who gives approval, how are the entries recorded. There should not be any fraud. So to for a detailed check of the system of accounting, we appoint internal auditors. So internal audit is actually a check of the entire system. Like, I remember working in the internal audit department, so we used to pick up any particular area and audit that in depth. It helps the statutory auditor because they don't have time to go through for such an in-depth analysis. They also rely on the report of the internal auditor. So they rely on their findings. So internal auditor, it actually supports statutory audit. It helps them to complete the audit relying on the, because see, if the systems are working properly, the financial statements will be generated accurately. Internal auditor can be a chartered accountant. He may or may not be in employment of the company. You can be an employee, you can be independent, no issues. You can be a cost accountant, any other professional as decided by the court. Companies that require internal audit, a listed company, compulsory. If you're an unlisted company, okay, if you're an unlisted company, your outstanding deposits, if they're more than 25 crores at any time, okay, even for one day, if it is crossing that limit, you need to appoint an internal auditor. Or if your paid up capital is 50 crores or more during the previous financial year, loans or outstanding borrowing from banks, public financial institution exceeds 100 crores at any time, even one day. If it is crossing that limit, you need to appoint an internal auditor. Or the turnover is 200 crore or more. If you are a private company, your outstanding loans, borrowings from public financial institutions or bank is 100 crores or more at any time during the previous financial year, or your turnover exceeds 200. Now, how do I remember? They are all double: 25, 50, 100, 200. Okay, to 25, 50, 100, 200. 200 is turnover because turnover is always the maximum. So deposit, capital, loan, borrowing, turnover. 25, 50, 100, 200. 100, 200 in case of private company. So students, with this we come to an end of accounts of company. Next, let us discuss audit and auditors. Next, let us discuss audit and auditors. Provisions are same as you have studied in audit. So I don't think this should take a long time. Audit and auditors. Now, you are already aware on why a company needs to conduct an audit. What is the role of an auditor? Now, company is an artificial person. The company is not managed by the owner. So these are various points that you need to remember to understand why we appoint an auditor. Company is an artificial person. Company is not managed by the owners, the shareholders. You can call them as member. I always prefer calling them as members. Members do not participate in the day-to-day administration of the company. They have given the authority to board of directors. So board of directors actually manage the company. Members have given their hard-earned money to the board of directors. So they would want to know how the company is utilizing their money. Whenever they question the board of directors, they answer, yes, everything is going as per plan. We are using the money for the purpose for which it was raised. Members never get a clear idea. They can never understand whether there is anything wrong in the company. Is there any fraud, any misappropriation? Is the company using the money properly or not? Is it functioning as they are claiming? Members, they don't have that idea. So they want someone to check the books of accounts for them. Instead of asking board of directors, they prefer some outside independent third party. So an independent third party is sent to check the books of accounts, whether they give a true and fair view of the state of affairs of the company. This independent third party is auditor. Okay, they audit. It means they check, they verify the books of accounts. They Yes. So they give an opinion whether the books show a true and fair view. Now, whenever students ask me, ma'am, what is the meaning of true and fair view? I always tell them कि जो लिखना चाहिए था वो लिखा है, जैसे लिखना चाहिए था वैसे लिखा है, जो लिखना चाहिए था वो लिखा है. इट मीन्स दैट ऑल द मटीरियल ट्रांजैक्शंस आर रिकॉर्डेड. जैसे लिखना चाहिए था वैसे लिखा है, फॉलोइंग द अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड्स, फॉलोइंग द अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसीज ऑफ द कंपनी. जैसा लिखना चाहिए था, जो फॉर्मेट में लिखना चाहिए था, शेड्यूल 3 फॉलो किया, सब वैसा ही है. इट मीन्स दैट द स्टेटमेंट्स शो अ ट्रू एंड फेयर व्यू. दिस इज द रोल ऑफ एन ऑडिटर, to verify whether the books of accounts maintained by the company give a true and fair view of the state of affairs of the company. Who can be appointed as an auditor? Individual chartered accountant, someone who is holding certificate of practice. A firm where majority of partners practicing in India are chartered accountants. So you can appoint a firm of chartered accountants where majority of them are practicing in India. So it is not compulsory that all should be CAs. So you can have a tax consultant, you can have a company secretary also. So it is not necessary that in a firm of chartered accountants, everyone will be a practicing CA. Maybe one or two here and there can be of some other profession, but majority of them are CAs practicing in India. You can also, this firm, okay, the firm can be an LLP also, limited liability partnership. If you see, now you will be applying for articleship. Notice that many of these partnership firms have now converted themselves into LLP because the liability is limited. They get all the features of a limited liability company. Appointment of first auditor. Okay, so now the company is incorporated and we want to appoint a first auditor. In case of a normal company, that is a company other than government company, board will appoint the first auditor, and this appointment will be made within 30 days of registration. See, you can convert this table into sentence form. The board shall appoint the auditor within 30 days of registration. If the board does not appoint the auditor, then they will inform the members regarding this failure, and members will appoint the auditor within 90 days by calling an extraordinary general meeting. The auditor who is so appointed will hold office till the conclusion of the first annual general meeting. In the annual general meeting, the members will meet together, they will appoint another auditor. In case of a government company, section 139, subsection 7. Comptroller and Auditor General of India will appoint an auditor within 60 days of registration or incorporation of the company. What if the CNAG fails to appoint? Then in that case, they will inform the board, and board will within the next 30 days appoint they will appoint an auditor. In case the board fails, the board will then inform the company that we have not appointed the first auditor within 30 days. The company will then call EGM. They will appoint the first auditor within the next 60 days of information. So within 60 days, they will appoint the first auditor. The first auditor will hold office till the conclusion of the first annual general meeting. What about subsequent auditors? Now, this was the information about first auditor. What about subsequent auditor? Now, in the first annual general meeting, I'll write it for you. In the first annual general meeting, we will appoint an auditor for a term of 5 years. So, he will hold office from the first AGM to second, second to third, third to fourth, fourth to fifth, and fifth to sixth AGM. So, this is 1 year. 2, 3, 4, and 5th year. Okay, so in case of other companies, subsequent auditor will be appointed in the annual general meeting. It's an ordinary business. By passing an ordinary resolution, you can appoint the auditor. Auditor will hold office from the conclusion of that first meeting till the conclusion of the 6th meeting. It means that he will hold office. He will be in office for 5 years. So you can appoint an auditor at once for 5 years. In case of government company, the appointment of subsequent auditor will be made by the Comptroller and Auditor General of India for a financial year within 180 days from the commencement of that financial year. That person will hold office till the conclusion of the annual general meeting. So simple provisions, everything is given to you in proper chart format. So I don't think there is any scope of doubt. There are certain companies like listed company and specified class of companies whose auditor have to be rotated. Now why? If you go to the bank, have you seen a person as a cashier for 10 to 12, 15 years? No. It is a position in which you cannot keep a person for long. That person will 100% come to know about the loopholes. He will come to know that these notes are never checked. This is the time period when there is slack security. So they will come to know the loopholes and they will take advantage of that. Same goes for auditor. They can collide with the management. If they are in one position, they know about the loopholes in the company. They can collide with the management. They can produce fraudulent records. So in order to avoid that, we have now come up with the concept of rotation of auditors. Listed companies will have to rotate the auditors, and in other specified companies, we will discuss that next. They will appoint auditors whose term will get over after 5 years. Now, in case of individual, if an individual is appointed as an auditor, now I am a proprietor, I have a proprietary firm. Okay, I am a chartered accountant, a practicing chartered accountant. I have a proprietary business, and I am appointed as an auditor. I can be appointed for one term of 5 years. See, because appointment is for 5 years, right? So I can be appointed for one term. What about what after what will happen after my term gets over? Then you will have to take cooling period of 5 years. It means you cannot be appointed as an auditor of that company. You can be appointed as auditor of any other company, but you cannot be reappointed as an auditor for 5 years. 5 years cooling period is over. You can again be appointed as auditor. I am a firm of chartered accountants. I can be appointed for 2 terms of 5 years each, but I cannot be appointed for 10 years at a stretch. I will be appointed for 5 years. Once the term is over, I can be appointed for another 5 years. So like that, 2 terms. What if the 2 terms are over? Then again cooling period of 5 years. After 5 years of cooling period is over, I can again be appointed for 2 terms of 5 years each. As on the date of appointment, no audit firm which has common partners to the other audit firm whose tenure has expired immediately preceding the financial year shall be appointed as auditor for a term of 5 years. Please highlight this as very important for case-based question. Now let's say that XYZ is a firm of chartered accountants. XPQ is another firm of chartered accountants. They have just completed their 2 terms of 5 years each. They have completed their term. Now we cannot appoint this firm as auditor because one of the partners is common. So during the cooling period, XPQ, they cannot be appointed as chartered accountants. They cannot be appointed as an auditor because a partner is common. Okay, the cooling period is over. Now can I appoint this firm as an auditor? Yes, then you can appoint. So during that cooling period, you cannot appoint another firm having a common partner. Otherwise, what is the use of rotation? When you want that same partner to continue. Rotation can also be possible in case of joint auditors, we went to our auditing. Like I remember when I had gone to audit, that was my first year. So in that particular organization, we were joint auditors. We were auditing expenses and liabilities for 2 years. After 2 years, and the other joint auditors, they were in charge of auditing the asset and the income side of that is the income side of P&L and asset side of balance sheet. After 2 years, we would interchange the profile. We would audit the income and the asset side, and they would audit the expenditure side of P&L and liability side of balance sheet. So that is how internal rotation was done. Even in a partnership firm, that is a firm of chartered accountants, even in the firm, you can internally agree that for 2 years, I as a partner will be in charge of this company, and then after 2 years we will rotate and some other partner will be in charge of the audit of that company, so that internal rotation is also possible. These are specified class of companies that are required to rotate their auditors. Okay, the term, after the term is over, they will appoint someone else. Unlisted public company having paid up capital of 10 crore or more. Private companies having paid up capital of 50 crores or more. Now there are companies whose paid up capital is below these limits. Okay, if you're an unlisted public company, your paid up capital is less than 10 crore, or maybe you are a private company and your paid up capital is less than 50 crores. But we have public borrowings from financial institution, banks, or public deposits of 50 crore or more. Even then, auditors will rotate. Okay, even then, rotation is applicable. A retiring auditor may be reappointed as at an AGM. This is possible in case of a firm appointed as an auditor. So a retiring auditor can be reappointed at an AGM provided he is not disqualified for reappointment. Now, what are the cases for disqualification that we will study next? So you should not attract any of those disqualifications. He has not given company a notice in writing of his unwillingness to be reappointed. Sometimes you voluntarily tell the company, please don't appoint me, I don't want to continue as an auditor. Or a special resolution has been passed that the person that you appoint someone else as an auditor, or appoint anyone but not him. So unless a special resolution is passed, you can reappoint. So see the wordings. A retiring auditor may be reappointed if a special resolution is not passed. But a retiring auditor may not be reappointed if a special resolution is passed asking the company to appoint someone else, some other person, some other firm in place of the retiring auditor. Where at an AGM, no auditor is appointed or reappointed, then the existing auditor will continue to be auditor of the company. Now, these 3 points, students, they are important for theory type of question. So please highlight this. Retiring auditor may be reappointed at AGM unless casual vacancy, again, can be asked as a short note. What is the meaning of casual vacancy? Actually, this term is not properly defined in the Act. It generally means the vacancy which is caused due to death, insolvency, disqualification, resignation of the auditor after accepting a valid appointment. So over here, casual vacancy, it means a vacancy which is caused due to death, disqualification, resignation of the auditor. He has accepted a valid appointment, but later on, he attracts disqualification, or he dies, or he resigns. Casual vacancy is created. In case of companies, now I have bifurcated it into two. In case of companies whose accounts are subject to be audited by auditor appointed by CNAG, like a government company, in that case, the vacancy will be filled by comptroller and auditor general of India within 30 days. And if it is not filled within 30 days, then it will be filled by the board within the next 30 days. What about other companies? In case of other companies, that is other than the companies whose auditor will be appointed by CAG, the casual vacancy will be filled by the board within 30 days of creation of that vacancy. But what if the vacancy is caused by resignation of an auditor? See, resignation is a very grave matter. We would like to know why he has resigned. What are the reasons? So, in that case, appointment by the board shall also be approved by the shareholders or by the company at the general meeting within 3 months of recommendation of the board. Such appointment will also be approved, that is important, by the shareholders of the company at the general meeting to be called within 3 months from the date of recommendation by the board that we need to appoint some other person. This auditor has resigned. So we would want to know, have you followed the proper procedure for the resignation, and why has he resigned? We want to know the reason. So since it is an important matter, we also require approval of the shareholders. Auditor who is so appointed will continue to hold office till the conclusion of the next annual general meeting. Then in the next AGM, you will again appoint an auditor. Because that's a normal business, it's an ordinary business of AGM. Resignation by auditor. Now, what is the reason for him resigning? This is something which is very important, because auditor resigning is something which casts doubt on the company. Is there any fraud? Has he found some fraud? Or why are you forcing him to resign? Have you received your fees? So there is a form ADD3 which is to be filled. In that we will mention all the details. In my video lectures, I have also discussed all the forms. I will actually show you the forms. So it's very important to get a practical experience of what exactly is mentioned in the form. Only then you will be able to understand the concept, and when you go for audits, that time you will have a better clarity of the concepts. In case you want video lecture students, books, test series, you can follow the link in the description box. Visit my website theorymasterslearning.com. There is a lot of content useful for exam. Resignation, yes, by auditor. I will first read of the company other than government company. Fill form ADD3 within 30 days of resignation. File it with the ROC and the company. Okay, so that is the auditor who has resigned. He will file within 30 days of resignation form ADD3, and he will file it, give one copy to the registrar, another to the company. Appointment is by the company, so the resignation will also be submitted to the company. In case of government company or any other company which is controlled by central or state government, the auditor shall within 30 days, points are the same, they shall within 30 days of resignation file and submit form ADD3 now to company registrar and also comptroller and auditor general, because they are the authority. CNAG is the authority appointing the auditor. So you also need to submit that form to the comptroller and auditor general of India. Obviously, you will mention the reasons for resignation. The form itself is self-explanatory. What is the reason? Have you audited? How much was audited? What is the period up to which you have audited the books? Have you paid the fees? Is there any fraud that was highlighted? So they try to understand the reason for his resignation. Sometimes company may remove an auditor. Over here also we need to send, why are you removing the auditor? So over here also we will require a form to be filled for removal of auditor. Reason for removing the auditor. The date up to which he has audited the account. Have you paid the fees? Is it that you don't want to pay the fees, that is why you're removing the auditor? Has he found some fraud? Is the profit and loss properly made? So we're trying to find at what stage he is leaving, at what stage you are removing him. Auditor can be removed before his term expires. See, you can change the auditor in the annual general meeting after expiry of his term. But here we want to know, why are you removing the auditor even before his term has expired? So you can do so by obtaining the approval of the central government. See, I have mentioned it over here. This point is important. You can remove an auditor by obtaining approval of the central government, because it is something which is a grave matter. It's something which is important. Why are you removing an auditor? It's unusual actually. So we want you to seek approval of the central government. The person who is exiting will be given an opportunity. He will be served with a notice. Okay, so a special notice will be given For removal of auditor, it can be given by the members of the company that we don't want him to work as an auditor, or maybe the company's board of directors have realized that we cannot continue with them as auditor. So a special notice is required to be given for removal. Board meeting will be held to decide about removal and authorizing the filing of application to the central government. Application will be made in form ADT2. Yes, I would advise you to remember this form number within 30 days of board meeting. Approval of central government will be received. After approval of central government, we will also send a special notice for calling the meeting where we will pass this resolution for removing the auditor. You will give the auditor a reasonable opportunity of being heard. His representation, which he has sent, yes, he will also send a representation as to why I should not be removed. That representation will be forwarded to the members, or if he feels that it is not forwarded, then he will insist that you read it out in the meeting. Auditor can be removed only by passing a special resolution. And finally, if everything goes as per plan, auditor will be removed. Disqualification of auditor, yes. Many case-based questions can be asked from disqualification of auditor. Section number is important. Now, following shall not be eligible to be appointed as auditor of the company. You cannot appoint a body corporate, like a company. You cannot appoint them as auditor. Yes, but LLP is an exception. LLP can be appointed as an auditor, provided that only chartered accountants who are partners of LLP can audit and sign the audit report. No officer or employee of the company can be appointed as statutory auditor. We are discussing disqualification of statutory auditor. Internal auditor can be your employee, not statutory. Any partner or employee of such officer or employee. So this officer or employee has a partnership firm. That partner cannot be appointed as auditor. The main reason for these disqualifications is that we want the auditor to be independent, third party, some unbiased person. We don't want him to have any kind of financial, monetary connection with the firm, any kind of connection wherein he can be influenced. See, the members, outsiders, prospective investors, they rely on the auditor's report. So we want that auditor should give an unbiased report of the financials, true and whether they show a true and fair view of the company, of the affairs of the company. Now, a person who either himself or his relative or a partner is holding any security or interest in the firm, interest is in case of companies not having share capital, you hold either in your company or its holding, subsidiary, associate. But this is quite unfair. Like you cannot hold shares, we understand. But why stop your relative from owning shares? So law has made a small exception. Relative of an auditor may hold securities in that company in which you are auditing of face value less than rupees 1 lakh. If later on it increases, if at the time of appointment the investment was less than 1 lakh, like 90,000. After appointment of the person as an auditor, your relative purchased more shares and now he holds 1.5 lakh face value of shares. Then you will attract the disqualification and that will lead to casual vacancy. Person who himself or his relative is indebted to the company, not even company but subsidiary, holding, associate, in excess of 5 lakhs. So if you are indebted, you have to pay to the company 2 lakhs. You can still be appointed as an auditor. But if it exceeds 5 lakhs, you cannot be appointed as auditor. Person who has given guarantee or security in connection with indebtedness of third person, like you are acting as a surety. Are company, don't worry, if he doesn't pay, I will pay. If you are acting as surety, you cannot be appointed as auditor if the amount is exceeding 1 lakh. A person or a firm, whether directly or indirectly, has business relation, monetary relation, either with a company, associate, holding, subsidiary. A person whose relative is a director. So I am a person whose relative is a director. So my relative is a director of your company. I cannot be appointed as auditor of your company. A person whose relative is in employment, okay? Sorry. A person whose relative is a director or is in employment of the company, as I'll just make the changes. There are certain grammatical errors over here. Or is in employment of the company as a director or KMP. So if my relative is a director or my relative is in full-time employment as a director or KMP, I cannot be appointed as an auditor. Person who is in full-time employment elsewhere. Now I am working in a company. I also have my practice. But I cannot be appointed as an auditor because I am in full-time employment somewhere else. Why? Because how will I manage both things? Na? How will I manage my full-time employment as well as my firm, or maybe as a proprietor I am providing the services of a chartered accountant? How can I practice and pay attention to the whole time employment? I cannot be appointed as auditor. Person who's auditor of more than 20 companies, that's the maximum limit now. How can a person audit 50 companies, 30 companies, 100 companies? There is a limit, no, to there's a limit to the amount of work that a human being can do. As an auditor, you will have to go physically work, no, even if you are at a very senior level, you're a partner, you have employees, but still you will have to review. You will have to review the work. How will you review the work of 50 people? How will you attend meetings of 50 companies? It's not possible, physically not possible. So you cannot be appointed as an auditor of more than 20 companies. Person who has been convicted of an offense involving fraud and a period of 10 years, cooling period, has not elapsed from the date of conviction. So someone who has been convicted of an offense cannot be appointed. After 10 years, he can be appointed as an auditor. Person who directly or indirectly renders any services referred to in section 144 of the company. It refers to the services that you are rendering to the company. If the above disqualifications are attracted, then it will be deemed as a casual vacancy. The board will have to fill it. We discussed the procedure for filling casual vacancy earlier, yes. Punishment for contravention, the last part of this chapter. Students, most of these points know that we are discussing, I have put it in such a format that it is self-explanatory. If you memorize it in this manner, I don't think you will go wrong, because these are all procedures which you need to memorize. And you have already studied this in audit. That's the best part. In case of a company, if suppose we find that you have contravened with any of the provisions of the act, any of these provisions, then in that case the company and officer, now I have divided this into two. What are the penalties imposed on the company and officer, and what are the penalties imposed on the auditor? So I have divided that in that manner. In case an auditor contravenes the provisions of section 139 to 146, in case of company, yes, the company will be punished with fine of at least 25,000 rupees, which may extend to 5 lakh. And the officer who has contravened these provisions, like giving false information to the auditor, colluding with the auditor, they will be liable for fine ranging from 10,000 minimum, which may extend to 1 lakh. What is the penalty on auditor? If the auditor has contravened provisions of 139, 143 to 145. Students, here there is a small amendment actually. I forgot. Over here it is 144. Okay. Section 144 or 145. There is an amendment over here. If you contravene with the provisions of section 139, 144 or 145, then the auditor will be punished. Now over here, if it is not a willful, like he didn't do it on purpose, but yes, there is a contravention, so you will be punished for fine ranging from 25,000 to 5 lakh, or 4 times the amount of remuneration, whichever is lower. So how do we need to compare? So fine, okay, we will write over here, you will be subject to fine depending on the level of contravention. We will determine anything between 25,000 to 5 lakhs. We will compare it with 4 times the remuneration. Whichever amount is less, that will be your punishment. If the default is willful, then you will be subject to imprisonment, which may extend to 1 year. And the keyword is and over here, and fine ranging from 50,000 to 25 lakhs, or 8 times the amount of remuneration, whichever is less. So again, we will compare fine with now 8 times the remuneration. Whichever amount is less, that will be your penalty. Such an auditor will also be liable to refund whatever remuneration he has received because he has not performed his duties properly. And he will have to pay for damages. You can underline that. Yes, he will be liable for damages to the company, to the statutory bodies, authority, members, creditors, any person who has been misled due to this incorrect, misleading statement made in his audit report. So, one is he will have to return the remuneration. Secondly, he will be liable for damages that they have suffered. Now, what is damage? Like, I bought shares of the company relying on the statement of auditor. Now, that statement turned out to be false and the share price reduced. I suffered loss. I can claim that from the auditor. So he will be subject to penalty, fine, imprisonment. Apart from that, he will also be liable to refund his remuneration and pay for damages. So students, these were all the important concepts from audit and auditors. In this video, we discussed declaration and payment of dividend, accounts of a company, audit and auditors. And with this, we also complete our Prayas revision lectures with test series. There is a test paper based on these 3 units. Link is in the description box. Solve that test paper, and I will also put a discussion video. I will explain the marking scheme, so you can mark, you can give yourself marks based on that video discussion. If you want all these notes, test papers with solution and marking scheme, link is in the description box. Do visit my website theorymasterslearning.com for books, lectures, test series, and the most important book now for CA students is the Law Compiler Bomb, because it has all the possible questions, exhaustive list of questions from which your paper will be set. Yes, so it's an exhaustive list and highly recommended book for all the students studying and preparing for foundation and inter. So students, I hope you liked these videos. If you feel confident, if you feel that yes ma'am, we are now confident, everything has been covered with lot of clarity, please write the word confident in the description box. I would love to know your feedback. Do connect with me. You can yes, connect with me on all the social media platforms. You are present everywhere, Facebook, Instagram. You can leave your comment on my website, you can on the Google page, or best is in the description box. I'm really looking forward to your feedback on the entire revision sessions. Okay, so with this I take your leave. Hope you enjoyed it. Give me a thumbs up if you like these video lectures, and do share the channel, your channel, with your friends and students who are interested in pursuing CA. All the best, students. We will stay connected till your exam. I will try to come up with many videos for your benefit.